Hello and welcome to the Corona Yoga Challenge. Today is day 185 and today we are doing tripod pose, Prasriti Padottanasana, and it is page 24 of your yoga home practice journal. Tripod pose, let's just do it for a moment so that you've got an idea of it. It's legs wide, hands down on the floor is a traditional tripod pose. So that's the kind of fuller version. What we're going to look at to start with is different ways that you can adapt it, because that doesn't suit many people's bodies, so we have to look at different ways to make it easier. So for some people, doing it onto a chair is going to be the only way forward, so legs wide and just settle down onto the chair. Another way of doing it is to keep the knees a little bit bent. That suits people with tighter hamstrings. Another thing is to have the hands on the thighs so that we can be much higher up, particularly if you're pregnant or if there are any other issues going on in the back. Being higher up is definitely a way forwards. Another thing that you can do is just take your feet much narrower so that we can do it from here. It creates more stretch in some ways, but for some people's body, bringing the legs in narrower is better. And obviously for other people's body, taking them out wider makes it easier because you end up much closer towards the floor. Another thing, traditionally when we're doing, it's kind of good practice to have your toes facing straight forward. So if you like your feet are on parallel lines, or the trajectory of the feet is going on parallel lines. For some people, they really want to take their toes out a little bit. I would say if you have to do that, but gently move them in, the toes slightly in, so we come more towards that parallel, feet straight forward rather than the toes wide. So we're working towards this straight forwards position. But if that does cause you an issue with your knees, then obviously taking the toes out is a much better idea. Another ones that we've got, these are the most important variations that ways to adapt it so that it's comfortable for you. For some people, they might not even want to come down onto a chair. It might be more that the back of a chair is a good place to be. So it's very much dependent on your body. So other things that you can do with tripod pose so that you can adapt it and keep enjoying it. So a nice thing to do is to take your hands behind your back, I'll do it from the side, so that you can lift your hands up and then you can tip yourself forwards and you can come far forwards, or you can just come a little bit forwards and you can get that feeling of gently extending the hands back and down towards the floor, which is quite delightful feeling when it feels good. Another thing that you can do is from hands resting onto the thighs, instead we can take the hands onto the back of the body. So you can take them onto the back of the pelvis, but quite a nice way to do it is to take your hands into prayer pose on the back of your body. Again, feet just comfortably wide for you, easing yourself forward so that hands are on the back of the body. That can be very nice. So there's the feeling of keeping the body lengthened out, so we keep the kind of length in the spine. There's also the way of rounding down so the shoulders come down towards the floor. You can take your hands onto your ankles and lean forwards. You can be onto your hands. You can take your hands wider, you can come down and onto your elbows. And this is the start of coming up into headstand from here. I'm not going to come up today, I'm not in that mood. Got a little bit of a mild cold hanging around, but this feeling of taking the hands into the heads, and then it can be just nice and easy to kind of, well, maybe not nice and easy, but it can become quite nice and easy to come up that way. Another thing that you can do is you can have your hand on the floor and you can extend yourself out and round. Just make sure there's no tightness in the back. Remember that what we're wanting to do is work into the rib cage and into the middle of the back as we're coming out. So you can come round both ways from here, which is also a lovely thing that you can do from here. Let's just come in for a moment. So another thing, let's just check what... Oh yeah, that was the last one that I've not done. I knew there was one that I hadn't done. So another one that I quite like doing, that's in the book, is to be arching and dipping from here. So you could be doing this on the chair, you can be doing it on the floor. For most people, probably doing it on the chair is better than on the floor. But so you round down, and then you come back up. So lengthen the spine, curl the spine. So you can get that lovely feeling of working with your breath to ease the back out And you get that nice feeling of being able to stretch and ground through the legs as you do this. Another thing that you can do is you can walk your hands back and between your legs so that you're coming back and in, so you're coming much further in, and you can end up with your head coming either onto the floor or towards the floor. And that is us. Had a little walkthrough of tripod pose. I think it's a lovely pose that you're going to really, really enjoy, and I hope that that's given you some nice ways of working with it this week. If you find other things that you really like, then do feel free to let me know, and I can incorporate them in future. And if you find any issues that you think, no, this just really isn't working for me, let me know as well, because sometimes it's something quite subtle and quite important that you can do to find a better way of working with it. In fact, that's just made me think of one thing that often happens. So often in tripod pose, we end up with this sort of thing happening, so that the tummy is drawing back, and sometimes it's tight hamstrings, which is why if this happens for you, that your back slightly arches, bend the knees, you'll be able to lengthen your back, then lift up through the tailbone. And think about the feeling of making space into the tummy area, so we're lengthening between the pelvis and between the rib cage, so we're lengthening out through the tummy, and then the shoulders are moving down the back of the body, so we get a nice, steady, strong, comfortable place for the upper body. I think that's enough for one day, isn't it? I think you've got enough for your 4 days of practice to see what you like best about tripod pose and how it's going to really work for you. The thing that I think is really good about it is that when you come forwards with the legs wide, there's less pressure on the hamstrings. So often people find that they can come further forwards and enjoy that feeling of coming further forwards with the legs wide. So all the best to tripod pose, Prasriti Padhanasana, and your week of tripoding. Thank you very much.